Just like any turn-based RPG, attacks are the very foundation of the combat in Megami Tensei. For the most part, the skills you find throughout the games are pretty useful, like you got physical attacks, elemental magic attacks, status ailment attacks, status buffs, status debuffs. If it's in the game, there's probably some use you can get out of it. But that's not always the case. There are always going to be those skills that just aren't worth your time, and some that can actually do more harm than they do good. That is what I'm going to be looking at in this video. The most useless skills in Megaton games that I think you should never use. Now, for the skills I include on here, I'm going to be looking at other factors besides the skills themselves, such as how and when in the games you get them, and which demons learn them. Like, it'd be easy for me to put all the low or medium damaging skills on here, but the whole point of them is that you get them early in the game before you get access to the stronger skills. But not only that, I'm also going to be looking at specific situations where they may or may not be useful. For example, you might say that Inferno from Devil Survivor 2 is a bad skill because it's basically Miragi Dyne, but it hits everyone, including the party. But it also has a much lower MP cost than Miragi Dyne, and if your entire party drains fire spells, it can actually be used to heal the party. So that can make it go from really bad to really good. Now, if there are any I happen to miss, be sure to let me know in the comments, and also mind you, this is not a countdown. There's not going to be a top 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, or anything like that. And now that that's out of the way, let's get on with the video. Starting off with Nocturne, we have not one skill, but an entire category of skills, and that is all the demon conversational skills. These are the skills that keep showing up in your fusion results that you don't want, like trade, pester, loan, begging. There are just too many to name them all. So, I gotta ask, has anyone ever actually gotten any use out of these skills? Because I think the only time I've ever actually used one of these was in my Nocturne no buff playthrough. When I was grinding for money, I used Threaten to try to get Maka from the enemies, and even then, it only gave me useless magic stones half the time. More often than not, they just get in the way of other skills that I'd rather have, and if I'm trying to recruit a demon, chances are I'll just use Demi-Fiend to do it. Surprisingly, we have another whole category of useless skills in Nocturne, the anti-element skills. Normally, these skills are great because they can be used to counter a demon's weakness, but unlike other games where it overwrites the demon's weakness, in Nocturne, all it does is reduce the damage by half and nothing else, meaning it doesn't actually cover your weakness. I mean, yeah, it does reduce the extra damage, but it still counts as a weakness and it still gives the enemy another turn, so what's the point? Moving on to Strange Journey, we have one that some of you may have noticed, but were probably too afraid to use, and that skill is Lost Word. The in-game description reads Unpredictable Effect, but what it actually does is either fully heal HP, fully heal MP, or apply a random buff. That doesn't sound terrible until you realize that it can do that to either the party or the enemies. Even then, if the skill only did apply to the party, with a game so heavy on planning and strategy like SMT, if you're in a situation where you'd be so desperate that you rely on a skill with a random effect to get what you want, you're probably already dead. And the fact that even then it can apply to either side of the battlefield only makes it worse. It's really not worth the risk if you ask me, especially if you're fighting a boss. And now here we are at SMT4, and we're gonna be here a while because this game is home to some of the worst skills in the entire franchise. The first of which is Panic Caster. What this does is it increases the user's magic attack by 25% for a few turns, but it inflicts panic on the user. This provides a slightly higher buff to magic than Tarukaja, which gives you a 21% increase. However, Tarukaja also increases both physical and magic attack power. It also works on the entire party, lasts until the enemy cancels it, doesn't give you any status ailments, and it can stack 3 times. Which of these sounds like a better deal to you? The next skill on here is Blood Ritual. This skill was also in Strange Journey, and what it did there is it reduced the user's HP to 1, but maximized all their stats. Okay, kinda risky, but I can still see the benefits of using it. However, now in SMT4, it only increases your stats once. Yeah, only the user, only by 1 stage, and it reduces your HP to almost death. I mean, yeah, you do get it really early in the game before you get Luster Candy, but by this time you're also already getting Tarukaja, Rakukaja, and Tsukukaja, And you're going to need to heal, so Blood Ritual is basically going to take 2 turns to use anyway, so wouldn't you rather give your entire party +1 attack and defense rather than just +1 everything to 1 user? This next one is actually 2 skills. Those are Tetra Coerce and Makara Coerce. What these do is they cancel out the enemy's Tetrakarn or Makarakarn respectively. This may sound good on paper, but in practice, it's actually really bad. Mainly because enemies don't use Tetrakarn or Makarakarn that much, and when they do, you're better off just hitting them with the opposite attack type, or just taking the turn to either buff or heal. And it's not like these skills are easily accessible either. In SMT4, you have to buy the DLC, beat the bosses, and then go through the extremely complicated process of fusing Uriel and Gabriel. That's about it for entirely useless skills in SMT4, but remember what I said in the beginning about me also looking at which demons get them? The main reason SMT4 has so many useless skills is because a lot of them are just exclusive to demons that can't get any good use out of them. One example being Sanat's Gaia Rage. This skill deals heavy almighty damage to all enemies. That is by no means a bad skill, but being a magic attack and Sanat being a physical focused demon, there's really no reason for him to have it. And this is Sanat's exclusive skill. You cannot teach it to Flynn or pass it on to another demon through fusion. And this isn't the only one either. There's also Breath on Demon Iho, Lightning of God on Uriel, and Inferno of God on Michael, for example. Though I should mention that it's not completely impossible to pass exclusive skills to another demon. You can actually do this through the app Demon Fusion Lite. What this does is it lets you perform simple 2-demon fusion in battle, and in what I can only assume was an oversight, also works with exclusive skills. The catch is that you can't hand-pick your inherited skills. The game just automatically passes the highest ranked ones to your demon. So, if you want to be really tricky and clever with your fusion, you can give your demon the exact skill set you want, but for the average player, it's just more trouble than it's worth. And before we move on to the next game, we have a skill that is actually really good and not demon exclusive, but is only on here because there's just a better alternative. The skill I am talking about is Great Logos. Great Logos is tied with Anti-Tecton for being the strongest almighty skill in SMT4. It deals severe almighty damage to all enemies. That is amazing. However, Anti-Tecton not only has the same base power, but it also has an additional effect where it debuffs the stats of every target it hits. What really makes Great Logos worse, though, in my opinion, is the amount of hurdles you have to go through to get it. The only demon that learns this skill is Seraph, who you have to get by completing the 4 Wings 4 Heads quest, which is only available in New Game Plus, and only if you side with Jonathan at the route split. Anti-Tecton, on the other hand, is learned by 3 demons, one of which being Shiva, who you don't have to unlock, is very easy to fuse, and you can even fuse him at a lower level. The only advantages to using Great Logos over Anti-Tecton is that 1, it costs 10 less MP, and 2, it hits hordes 3 times, whereas Anti-Tecton only hits them once. So I suppose if you're really obsessed with conserving MP and are really worried about hordes that much, you could make the argument that there are reasons to use Great Logos. But if you ask me, it's just not worth the effort when Anti-Tecton exists and is much easier to get your hands on. Now we move on to the Persona games, and we are going to be looking at some skills that are terrible in pretty much every game: Life Drain and Spirit Drain. Again, these are skills that are normally great, but in Persona 3, 4, and 5, they always deal a fixed amount. In Persona 3, Life Drain did 35 damage, and Spirit Drain did 20. Oh, and let's not forget that these skills have MP cost too, so to be exact, you're really only getting back 15 MP with Spirit Drain. Just to show you how little that is, the MP cost of Mazionga and Mabufula is 16 MP. There is absolutely no reason for you to waste a turn using this skill. If you really need a way to recover MP, just use Invigorate 3. Do not waste a skill slot with this garbage. Oh, but wait, in Persona 4, Spirit Drain was buffed to 30 MP. And they nerfed Life Drain to steal just 30 HP. So, yeah, just don't use them. Moving on to Persona 4, we have High Counter. Now, this was one of the best skills to use in Persona 3, because this skill had a 50% chance to reflect all physical attacks. So, what makes it so bad in Persona 4? Well, for one thing, it, along with the other counter skills, were severely nerfed. In Persona 3, Counter had a 15% chance to work, while Counter-Strike had a 30% chance to work, and High Counter, like I said, had a 50% chance to work. Persona 4, Counter only has a 10% chance to work. Counter-Strike has a 15% chance, and High Counter only has a 20% chance. But the main reason I chose High Counter specifically is because of the changes Persona 4 made to the combat. In Persona 3, Physical was divided into 3 types: Strike, Slash, and Pierce. But in Persona 4, it was all condensed into just one category, which was Physical. So, you have these counter skills which have a very small chance to reflect only physical skills, but you know what else reflects physical skills? Repel Physical, which just straight up makes you reflect all physical skills 100% of the time. The other counter skills, well, you get them early on, so at that point, if you want to reflect physical skills, those are really all you've got. But High Counter, the earliest you get it is from Tam Lin at level 53. Repel Physical, on the other hand, you get from Rongda at level 55. And if you're playing Golden and you have a Persona with Resist Physical, you can actually use Magician skill cards to get it even earlier. Did Persona Team not think this through? You have the option to run High Counter, which has a 20% chance of working, or you can just run Repel Physical, which has a 100% chance of working. Who at Atlas thought this was a good idea? Persona 5 kinda did the same thing with the counter skills, but they're a little better now because it's divided again, only into 2 categories though, Physical and Gun, and in fact there are no skills that resist and block Gun, so I can see somebody making a case for High Counter in Persona 5, but it's still only a 20% chance, and I still think it's better to have a 100% chance to reflect half of them than a 20% chance to reflect both. But now that we're on Persona 5, let's look at some of the new skills that were added in this game, like Ambient Aid, which increases the rate of inflicting status ailments during rain or some other extreme weather condition, like a pollen warning. That is just kind of a situational thing, and it's only for an effect that's not even that good. There's also Climate Decorum, which doubles your evasion rate during the same conditions, so I guess that's a little better, but still, having an effect that only works during special weather conditions just does not seem worth it to me. I'd rather save my skill slots for something I can always rely on. Though I should mention, in Royal, there's the Gloomy Child trait, which makes these effects always work, but if you're playing Vanilla, well, what you should do is stop and start playing Royal instead, but if you don't have a choice, then don't waste your time with these skills. Speaking of situational skills that are too unreliable, how about skills that only work when you're being ambushed, like Adverse Resolve, which increases your critical rate after you've been ambushed? You know what else does this? Apt Pupil, except it always works. Oh, and there's another one, Survival Trick, which allows you to survive an instant death attack with 1 HP once per battle. So that's an option, or you can just run Endure, which also does this, and actually works for all attacks. And last but not least, we have the Devil Survivor games, which, for the most part, are pretty balanced games. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say most of the skills in these games are actually a little too good. But I'm going to end this video with a skill that I actually think does more harm than good. And the worst thing about it is that it's one you actually can't say no to because it's a race skill. And that skill is the Vile's exclusive race skill, Chaos Wave. What this does is it increases your attack range by 2 squares. Sounds good, but it also disables extra turns and reduces your movement speed by 1. And worst of all, it halves your movement priority, meaning you'll only able to move half as often as everyone else. So yeah, you have your increased damage range, but it doesn't really matter because your halved movement priority gives the enemies more than enough time to get up close to you and pummel you with extra turns that you don't have. And if you somehow are alive when you do get to move, you still gotta deal with your reduced movement range. Now, this can be countered by running a Genmo with Phantasma, which gets your movement priority back to normal, but if that demon dies, you're screwed. Oh, and if you're wondering what the upgraded version of the skill does in Devil Survivor 2, all it does is increase your attack range by 3 instead of 2. Dragons, on the other hand, they have the option to temporarily increase their attack range to 6. So even with this upgrade, you can't even fight back against them. My god, what a way to ruin one of my favorite races of demons. And that is going to be about it for this video. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with my analyses of what I believe to be the worst skills in Megaton. Also, be sure to let me know if there are any I missed. I know I only covered a small handful of games, and that's mainly because in most of them I don't think there are actually that many bad skills in the franchise, but I do plan to make another one of these videos if I get enough suggestions. As always, thank you all for watching. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to check out my other social media links in the description. And if you want to support me on Ko-Fi, consider leaving a donation of just $3. It will get you featured in the credits of my next video. Until the next video, I will see you all later.